Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with the new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. I want to talk about this photograph, which I recently added to my collection. You might be wondering, what exactly does this have to do with the Civil War? Well, I wasn't sure at first. I later came to find out with the help of a friend. Let's start by taking a look at the image itself. What we see here is color tinting. And for those of you who are not students of Civil War photography, important to note that in some ways, folks who sat for the camera were no different than you and I. They wanted realism, and to them, color was part of reality, just like it is to you and I today. And so the photographer or a colorist added this tinting. It was not done in modern times. This is period from the Civil War times. Now, let's look at the content. There is a man with a graying beard who is sitting on a low chair, possibly a bench. He's holding a violin in his hand. His elbow is bumping up against a small table upon which is a vase with flowers. In front of him is a stool, like a folding stool with a tinted top material on top of that that's been tinted. And the image, the part of the photograph that really caught my attention is the flag that he's holding. And you can see the bow of his violin crossing over the flag. And so if you take a close look at that flag, you'll see there's a lot of color tinting going on. The canton is tinted blue, covering the stars of the flag, although they're barely visible. You can also see the stripes, which have been carefully painted over with a very fine brush to get the red striping in there. If you look very closely in a semicircle around the canton in the stripe area, you will see what appears to be writing. And the way that I was looking at it, I thought it spelled the word Washington. Now, this could be just me because the last several days I've been heavy duty researching into George Washington and the Washington family. So the letters represented Washington. I posted it on Facebook to a group of carte de visite and cabinet photograph collectors. And lo and behold, one of the senior editors of Military Images magazine, one of my good friends, Buck Zidell, sent me a text with an image attached. And guess what the image was? Well, it's a piece of sheet music. What I thought was a semicircular wording around the canton that said Washington was, in fact, the words 1,000 years. The blue tinting on the stars and the canton covered up the word song. What we're looking at here is a piece of sheet music from the Civil War period called Song of 1,000 Years by Henry Clay Work. Now, you may be wondering, is the man in the photograph Henry Clay Work? Well, I did some photo comparisons, and I don't think the two are at all the same man. So, what we have here is a violin player who is posed with the music for Song of 1,000 Years. Now, this is where the Civil War connection really comes into play. I want to preface this by saying or noting that every generation, every American generation since the ratification of the Constitution has worried about the future of the government, future of government of, by, and for the people. Perhaps no generation has faced those fears so directly as the Civil War generation. So the sheet music held by this violin player really speaks not only to the worries and the concerns, but it also speaks to the future. It speaks to the end of slavery and the beginning of a new era in America. I want to read the lyrics to you. It's not a particularly long song, but it really speaks to the moment. It speaks to Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. It speaks to America, the future. So here we go. Lift up your eyes, desponding freeman. Fling to the winds your needless fears. He who unfurled your beauteous banner says it will wave 1,000 years. 1,000 years, my Columbia. 'Tis the glad day so long foretold. 'Tis the glad morn whose early twilights Washington saw in times of old. What if the clouds, one little moment, hide the blue sky where morn appears, when the bright sun that tints them crimson rises to shine 1,000 years? Tell the great world those blessed tidings. Yes, and be sure the bondman hears. Tell the oppressed of every nation, Jubilee lasts 1,000 years. Fearless foes beyond the ocean, little we heed your threatening sneers. Little will they, our children's children, when you are gone 1,000 years. Rebels at home, go hide your faces. Weep for your crimes with bitter tears. You could not bind the blessed daylight, though you should strive 1,000 years. Back to your dens, ye secret traitors, down to your own degraded spheres. Ere the vinyl blessed of dazzling sunshine shortens your lives 1,000 years. Haste thee along this glorious noonday. Oh, for the eyes of ancient seers. Oh, for the faith of him who reckons each of his days 1,000 years. So there you have the lyrics of the Song of 1,000 Years by Henry Clay Work. Apparently, this violinist, who currently is nameless, took some interest in his music, enough interest to pose with it for this photograph. I'll add one footnote before closing. I was so excited about adding this image to my collection that I didn't look on the back of the photograph. And when I did, I saw the name of the photographer imprinted on it. It was partners, two photographers, and their names are Davidson and Coddington. Coddington is Archibald Coddington of Warsaw, New York, who would be a distant cousin to me. So, an interesting twist to find this photograph connected to one of the branches of my family tree. So, thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.